Now, in Genesis chapter 1:1 and in 2:4, especially the first half of the verse, these serve as sort of opening and closing summary statements which enclose what we call Genesis chapter 1. And so the creation week gets folded into those. So for example, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then chapter 2, verse 4 begins, "These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created." So these two verses together, they're sort of an echo. We can hear that they're summary statements of the whole. And so the thought here is that what it means to create is unfolded across these creation days and how they relate to, the creation as a whole. And so this idea of, create, that term winds up being functionally similar to the term make. In Hebrew, those are the terms bara and asa. And these two terms, create and make, wind up having a very similar function, defined broadly speaking by what happens in the 7 creation days. Now, the second verse of Genesis 1, this sort of lays out a framework, and it begins, "Now, the earth was formless and empty." And so those two sort of broad concepts, they could be used by the prophets to just speak of a time of judgment, but here kind of they serve as a play to set up 2 sets out of the first 6 creating days. The first 3 days are forming, days 1, 2, and 3. That is, separating light from dark, separating the heavens from the seas, and separating land from the seas. The next 3 days come back around and hit those same 3 areas, but in this case we have the heavens are filled with lights. The seas and the heavens are filled with creatures that swim and that fly. And the land is filled both with vegetation, animals, and humans. So sort of the structuring then of God's creation here in these 7 creating days. The first 6 separate and fill with light and life. So that comes down to what, to answer the question directly, what does it mean to create? To create then, if we were to define it by this chapter, would be especially to separate and to fill with light and life. Now, to separate here is in physical terms. Elsewhere in the scripture, we recognize that separation, this is exactly what becomes sort of used for a call to righteousness is a call to be separate, especially associated with holiness. And light and life become metaphorical concepts as well for the realities of the righteous person's relationship with the Lord and his work upon them. Now, the story goes on quickly, and the rebellion pushes back against these very things of creation. Rebellion brings death. Death is also separation from life. So we find that creation is a separation unto light, unto life, yet sin, this brings about a separation unto death. So to sin becomes a sort of anti-creational action by those creatures specially created in God's own image. To put it directly, to sin and bring about death creates a contradiction in the heart of fallen humans. These beings who are in God's very image, in his likeness, they rebel and bring about the opposite of what the Creator is about. They bring about death. And so this contradiction at the heart of humans is at a central part of our story and also the entire human drama.